Welcome to example 2, lesson number 7, and it is giving us, excuse me, 2 half-inch plates are connected to a 3/4 inch plate, so these are half-inch plate, half-inch plate, and this is a 3/4 inch plate. And hopefully you read through the study guide stuff and you can see this is a double shear, because the way I like to do it is if you break it into a kind of a free body diagram. Let's say you cut it, let's change colors, you cut it right here and you cut it right here, you can see that it needs to be divided over 2 planes to be able to transfer that load. In other words, it'll transfer equally, half up here and half down there. And that's why you end up getting the P over 2 and P over 2 over on this side, and then just P on this side. Alright, so moving right along, we're trying to figure out what is the allowable P. They also gave us all this information. You can read that if you want. So when you go in, you want to look at this as at 2 type of things. Well, I guess another important thing is it also tells us that it's a bearing type connection. So I'll write that down. It's a bearing type connection. And that the threads are excluded. I'll just do without threads. Sorry if my handwriting's a little messy. Alright, let's continue. And we want to look at it as 2 ways. You have the bolt, so that bolt's going to have to resist the shear to pull out. I mean, if you pull and you're pulling too hard, that bolt's going to rip right apart or shear off, I would say. And then another thing is that bolt, are the plates going to be able to handle that force? So that's the 2 ways you can look at it. And let's go ahead and look at it the first way. Is the bolt good enough? So we said we have 2 1-inch diameter bolts, ASTM A325 type bolts. So first thing you want to do is look in your steel book, and you want to go to page 4-5, and it says bolts, threaded parts, and rivets. They also have this table reproduced on page 128 of your study guide. And you want to go down. You have a bolt, so go down the bolt. You want to go A325, what kind of ASTM designation you have. Then you want to go connection type. And if you look down at the bottom, it says bearing type connection with threads excluded from shear plane is X. So that's what we want. We go over, and then we just go over the nominal diameter, excuse me. And we had a 1-inch, yes. You can see, what was it on STD or is it NSL? Let's go look what those are. STD is standard round holes, and NSL is a long or short slotted hole, normal to load direction, required for bearing type connection. And that's your Q. Oh, it's required for bearing type connection. That's what we have, so we need to use that. So that gives us 47.1, and it says allowable load in kips. So for 1 bolt equals 47.1 kips. But we have 2, so we're going to multiply that by 2, and we get what? 94.2 kips. I hope my math in my head is correct. I'm sure it is. It's not too difficult. Alright, so this is bolts. Let's see. Bolt capacity. Alright, so that's kind of the bolt shear capacity, I would call it. And they can handle 94.2 kips, and that's going to be this P right here. Okay, now if we want to go ahead and look at the steel plates, I mean, you kind of got to think about it. Well, you have P over 2 and P over 2, so if you want to do it in terms of P, you could add these 2 thicknesses together, so that would be 1 inch compared to 3/4 inch. So if you just think about it, okay, well, 3/4 inch will control, and I hope that makes sense to you, because if you have half the load going on a 1/2 inch and half the load going on a 1/2 inch compared to the full load going 3/4 inch, you'll see that the ratio is higher going to 3/4 inch. So the 3/4 inch steel plate will control. And then you want to go to page 4-6 or 4-6 in your steel book, or page 130 they have the same table that is reproduced. And once again, it's good to know where these are, and if you have a steelbook, I would just go ahead and actually I would familiarize yourself with these connections. When to use, when not to use is going to be your most difficult part. You're going to look at these tables and just say, what the heck? And they're not horribly confusing, but you just need to take 10 minutes and kind of look over that section. They should have the connection section, CONN, period, already tabbed for you. Just go to that, take a look at it. It's pretty simple. Alright, so once again, let me continue here. I'm on page 4-6. It says bolts and threaded parts bearing, allowable loads and kips. It says for slip critical and bearing type connections. And that's what we have. We have a bearing type connection. We go down and we want to look at the material thickness. And once again, controlling is going to be 3/4. So we go over to 3/4 and we just head to the right. We said we had for FU, which is the tensile strength. Hopefully you didn't giggle too much, but is 58 KSI. 38, go over 58 KSI, and it says you have to also use the bolt diameter, which we had 1, so that equals 52.2. So the plate capacity, let's call it, when I say 58.1, that sounds right. I'm going to go look over there again. 52.2. That was wrong. 52.2 kips. And this is actually, each 1 diameter inch bolt can transfer 52.2. And since we have 2 bolts, and it's hard to see because I only drew 1 in there, but we have 2 bolts, so you want to go ahead and multiply this by 2. 2 equals what? 104.4 kips. Alright. So as you can see, the capacity of your bolts is less than the capacity of your plates, and therefore your bolts you're going to control, and this is your capacity. That's going to be your answer. It's 94.2. And I hope that makes sense. This is kind of your min capacity. Wait, let me think. Did I say that correctly? This is your max capacity. That's what I meant to say. So this is what your plates can handle. This is what your bolts can handle. So if you're in between this, sometimes when I get confused, I like to do that. You just go in between and say, well, you have 100. Let's say if you have 100 kips. Okay, obviously this one's still going to be good. This one's going to be bad. So that will control. And I hope that makes sense to you. That's kind of a way I like to look back and double check myself. Because sometimes when you're going a little quick, it can get confusing. But once again, the allowable load P, so this is going to be P, is 94.2. And over here it's going to be 94.2 divided by 2, which should be 47.1. Alright, I will see you on the next video.